first week of free agency has come and gone, and nearly $3 billion was spent on free agents this year. But how did every team actually do? In this video, I'm going to be grading how every NFC team did in free agency so far. Last week, I covered every AFC team, and now it's time for the NFC. If you enjoyed this video, then please drop a like and subscribe if you're new. Subscribe takes just a second, and it really helps me out. Thank you, and let's get started. Detroit Lions, C+. The Lions only paid one big free agent, and that was cornerback DJ Reed to a 3-year, $48 million deal. I really like this move because they're not just replacing Carlton Davis, who signed with the Patriots. I think it's an upgrade. Plus, they're paying Reed less than what the Patriots are paying Davis. However, that's kind of all they did. They extended Derek Barnes and signed a few depth players on the D-line, but considering the fact that they're still sitting with nearly $50 million in cap space, I would have liked to see them do a bit more. I don't really know why they let Kevin Zeitler walk, and they could still use another edge rusher. The DJ Reed move was great, but they could have done a lot more to really solidify their place as a Super Bowl contender. Minnesota Vikings, A+. The Vikings desperately needed help in the trenches. So what did? They went ahead and signed some of the best available players at both offensive and defensive line. They signed Ryan Kelly, Will Fries, Jonathan Allen, and Javon Hargrave all to multi-year deals. They also re-signed Byron Murphy and signed Isaiah Rodgers to multi-year deals. They also traded away Ed Ingram to the Texans for a 6th-round pick and used that pick to trade for Jordan Mason, giving them a great 1-2 punch at running back. They only lost 2 notable players, Cam Bynum and Sam Darnold. Losing Cam Bynum sucks, but the Vikings weren't going to pay him $15 million a year. And losing Sam Darnold is fine because JJ McCarthy will be ready next season. If the Vikings paid Darnold as much as the Seahawks did, they likely wouldn't have signed some of the other players that they did. I would like to see them sign a veteran backup quarterback, preferably Joe Flacco, but overall, I think the Vikings have had an amazing offseason. Green Bay Packers, C. Despite the fact that the Packers are still sitting with $32 million in cap space, they have signed 3 free agents so far: Nate Hobbs, Mecole Hardman, and Aaron Banks. Plus, they extended 2 of their own players, Brandon McManus and Isaiah McDuffie. 4 out of those 5 moved, 1 of them I don't. I have no problems with the 2 extensions, plus the signing of Mecole Hardman. Those were fine moves. Signing Nate Hobbs was awesome because the Packers are in desperate need of a corner. However, signing Aaron Banks to a 4-year, $77 million deal is a move that I will never understand. Why they paid such a mediocre guard $19.25 million a season is ridiculous. When you see other guards like Will Fries, Joe Thuney, Kevin Zeitler, and Mekhi Becton making less money than Aaron Banks, it really makes you question why the Packers paid this man so much money. I get he is an out after 1 season, but it's still an egregious overpay. Banks will help, sure, but he is not worth that much, not even close. The Packers had a solid offseason, but the Banks signing really brings this grade down. Chicago Bears, A-. Once again, the Bears have had an incredible offseason. Caleb Williams got sacked 68 times last season. So what did? They traded for guards Jonah Jackson and Joe Thuney and signed center Drew Dahlman to a 3-year deal. They also gave Grady Jarrett and Dio Odegbo 3-year deals, giving them solid pieces along their D-line. The Bears' only notable loss was Keenan Allen, but they still have 2 solid receivers and they signed Olamide Zaccheaus. Overall, I think the Bears have done a great job at addressing the holes on their roster and are looking like they're going to be a pretty dangerous team in the fall. Tampa Bay Buccaneers, B-. The Bucs haven't done too much, mostly because of their negative cap space, but I don't think anything they've done has been bad, and they haven't lost anybody too important. I like the Hassan Reddick signing, and they extended Chris Godwin for 3 more years. They lost Robert Hainsey, but he only played 94 snaps for them last season. Overall, that's kind of all there is to talk about. It was a solid offseason with some minor improvements. Atlanta Falcons, C-. The Falcons entered free agency with negative cap space, so there was only so much they could do. They signed quite a few players, but none of them are anything special. Their largest contract was to Mike Hughes on a 3-year, $18 million deal. They lost a lot more than they gained, losing Grady Jarrett, Drew Dahlman, Matt Judon, and Justin Simmons. This Falcons team still has a lot of needs, especially on the defensive side of the ball, and I don't think these band-aid signings are going to do too much. They currently sit at negative $14 million in cap space, but hopefully they can clear some of that and bring a few more players in. Carolina Panthers, B. The Panthers had an absolutely atrocious defense last year, and they knew it. That's why they not only extended J.C. Horn to a 4-year, $100 million contract, but they also spent $134.5 million on defensive free agents, including Trayvon Moehrig, Tershawn Wharton, and Bobby Brown. They also brought in Rico Dowdle on a 1-year, $2.75 million deal, which I think is an absolute steal. They also didn't lose too many valuable players. It sucks to see Xavier Woods and Shaq Thompson go, but it's not the worst thing in the world. I think the Panthers have so far done a really solid job at addressing their defensive needs, and hopefully it pays off during the season. New Orleans Saints, B-. As usual, the Saints have had negative cap space entering free agency, so there was only so much they could do. They re-signed Chase Young to a 3-year, $51 million deal, and Juwan Johnson to a 3-year, $31 million deal. They brought in Justin Reed and Brandon Cooks, adding solid pieces on both offense and defense. They also signed everyone's favorite player, Will Clapp. They didn't lose anyone too important outside of Paulson Adebo, but I think they didn't bring him back because they're ready to let Kool-Aid McKinstry be a full-time starter. Considering the very limited cap space, I think the Saints have done a pretty decent job this offseason. Philadelphia Eagles, C-. Due to the combination of winning the Super Bowl and having limited cap space, free agency was not kind to the Eagles. They lost Milton Williams, Josh Sweat, Darius Slay, Mekhi Becton, Brandon Graham, and Isaiah Rodgers, and their biggest free agent signing was Azeez Ojulari to a 1-year, $4 million deal. They did extend both Zach Bond and Saquon Barkley, which are great moves that bring up this grade. Their defense should still be really good, but right now it looks a lot worse than last year. I'm giving the Eagles the benefit of the doubt because most teams lose a bunch of players after winning the Super Bowl, but they still have not had a great offseason. Washington Commanders, B. Despite entering with $77 million in cap space, the Commanders didn't really do too much in free agency. They signed Javon Kinlaw to a 3-year, $45 million deal. Well, for one, I think that's an overpay, and second, that's their Jonathan Allen replacement. That's a pretty sizable downgrade. They were able to retain Bobby Wagner and Zach Ertz, so that was good, but it's who the Commanders brought in outside of free agents that really gives them this grade. They traded a 5th-round pick for Deebo Samuel and a 2026 second-round pick and a few other picks for Laramie Tunsil. Deebo isn't coming off his best year, but he can still be a fun gadget player, and while Laramie Tunsil does commit a lot of penalties, he is still one of the best pass-protecting tackles in the league. Overall, I think the Commanders really improved, especially on the offensive side of the ball, and I wouldn't be at all surprised if they make another deep playoff run next season. Dallas Cowboys, D-. Yet another season of the Dallas Cowboys not doing jack shit in free agency. What else is new? They decided to let 1,000-yard rusher Rico Dowdle walk, only to bring in the electric running back combination of Javonte Williams and Miles Sanders. Yeah, these two are sure going to challenge Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery. They haven't done anything to address the wide receiver 2 role. Micah Parsons is still looking for an extension, and they have made 2 atrocious trades, trading a 6th-round pick for Kenneth Murray and a 5th-round pick for Kyer Elam. Both of those players stink. They also lost DeMarcus Lawrence and Jordan Lewis to the Seahawks and Jags. The only reason that this isn't an F is because they extended Kevontae Turpin and Osa Odigizua, but if they hadn't done that, then this would have been an F. A really bad free agency so far. New York Giants, B. The Giants have actually had a pretty solid offseason. They spent big on defense, bringing in Paulson Adebo, Javon Holland, and Chauncey Golston all to 3-year deals. They didn't do too much on offense though. They just re-signed Darius Slayton to a 3-year, $36 million deal, which admittedly I do think is a bit of an overpay. And at quarterback, they signed both Jameis Winston and Russell Wilson. Signing Wilson has positives and negatives. Positive is that it gives them a quarterback that can give them solid play and allow them to compete for maybe a wildcard spot if things really go right. However, this is a double-edged sword because Wilson is probably going to get this team 6 to 8 wins and they won't be able to draft a quarterback next year. And I don't think they're drafting one this year because I think the only reason that they signed Russ is because they're scared the Browns are taking Shedeur Sanders at pick 2. If Sanders does fall to 3, I'm sure they'll take him, but that's probably not going to be the case. I think this is a good signing now, but it could hinder them in the future. The real reason that this is a B and not lower is because they didn't lose a single important player in free agency, except for Adoree Jackson. They didn't do an absolute ton, but I think they really upgraded on defense and have done an overall solid job. Los Angeles Rams, B-. The Rams have had an interesting offseason to say the least. They replaced an old, slightly washed Cooper Kupp and signed an old, slightly washed Devontae Adams. I do think that this is an upgrade, but paying Adams $22 million a year is a lot of money, though I do understand why they did it. I really like the Poona Ford signing. The Rams had a bottom half run defense last season, and Poona Ford was really good in run defense for the Chargers last season. They did trade away Jonah Jackson, but they replaced him with Coleman Shelton, and getting a 6th-rounder for Jackson isn't bad. They lost Bobby Brown, but again, I think they upgraded at D-tackle with Poona Ford. Overall, I think the Rams have had a pretty solid offseason, and they should be pretty good next season. Seattle Seahawks, D+. I can already see the comments coming. Oh, they signed Sam Darnold. Oh, they signed Cooper Kupp. Hot take incoming, but I don't see the Seahawks plan here. First of all, signing Sam Darnold makes absolutely no sense. There, I said it. Darnold only thrived last season because he had a great system with a great O-line and exceptional receivers. And once the O-line started playing terribly, Darnold followed. He now enters the Seahawks situation with an awful offensive line and one good receiver. The Seahawks haven't done anything about the offensive line, and we've seen that Darnold's success depends on good O-line play. I'm really worried that Darnold is going to flop because he's going to have no time in the pocket. And again, he only has one good receiver, which leads me to the Cooper Kupp signing. This also makes little to no sense for multiple reasons. For one, Kupp is nearly 32 years old and his numbers have been declining ever since his 2021 season. Also, JSN and Cooper Kupp play extremely similar roles. They're both primarily slot receivers. JSN played 83.6% of his snaps in the slot last season, and Kupp played 66.7%. There's only room for one slot receiver in an offense most of the time, meaning one of these guys is going to have to kick outside. There is no way JSN is going outside after the year that he had, but Kupp just isn't the same on the outside. He is not going to be nearly as productive as he could be because JSN is going to be taking that slot role. This also means that their other starting outside receiver is Marquez Valdes-Scantling, who isn't very good. I honestly believe that Sam Darnold is being set up to fail, and I don't think he'll be that good. The only move that I really like from Seattle was the DeMarcus Lawrence signing, but overall, I think the Seahawks have had a really overrated and just not good offseason. Arizona Cardinals, B-. The Cardinals didn't make a ton of signings, but they were still active. They signed Dalvin Tomlinson and Akeem Davis-Gaither to 2-year deals, and they signed Jacoby Brissett as a solid backup quarterback. They extended Evan Brown and Baron Browning, and they didn't really lose anybody important. Their biggest move was signing Josh Sweat to a 4-year, $76 million deal. Considering they didn't lose anybody too important, and they brought in some solid players, I think the Cardinals have had a pretty good offseason. San Francisco 49ers, F. Yeah, I think most people saw this coming. We're saving the worst for last. The 49ers haven't made a single impactful free agent signing and have lost basically half their roster. Aaron Banks, Travarius Ward, Javon Hargrave, Jalen Moore, Talanoa Hufanga, Drake Greenlaw, Malik Collins, Jordan Mason, and Deebo Samuel are no longer on this roster. They're currently sitting with $42 million in cap space, but that's because I think they're gearing up to pay Brock Purdy. Overall, this roster is way worse than it was a month ago, and this has been a really bad offseason. But that's it. That is every NFC team's free agency grade so far. Where do you agree? Where do you disagree? Comment below. If you enjoyed this video, then please drop a like and subscribe if you're new. If you haven't already, go check out my AFC free agent grades, and that's it for me. See ya.